So we got the one and over. Kevin, I always do our shows differently. Usually I have two or three of my other co-hosts on, but they're all working right now. I'm like, I don't care. I got to do this man by myself because you have such a vast history. You're such well respected in everything that you do. And it's an honor to meet you, always meet you virtually, but pay attention to what you're doing in general. So talk about this. You're that CEO, you're that founder, you're that producer. You're in the Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences. You're in the Producers Academy. You've done all these things, and I love the things that you do on the charitable side of things. And I'm really still bummed to this day that I miss you at the Vince Bonanno, Judy Garland fragrance. So I was there helping put that together. And when I found out that you were there, I'm like, oh my God, I could have met Kevin.
Oh
I
man.
was like,
And that
oh
did
man.
you do that fashion show? That was something
No, that's
else.
the only thing I didn't do, but I
That was
helped bring it to
great
Tennessee.
though.
It was
It
really,
was,
really
I mean, I'm not big on fashion shows per se, but those were all like old Judy Garland, I guess, dresses that she wore in movies. And these beautiful models came out, and these creations were then sold to people in the audience. And it was just a really great thing to be in such a historical place as the Wiltern Theater, because it has that real deco-y feel to it, and have these old costumes from from the 40s and 50s.
and for the audience, just in case they don't know, the reason why we did it at the Ebel, because that's where Judy was
Oh,
discovered.
sorry, I said the Wiltern. I meant the Wilshire Bell. Sorry, you're right.
Absolutely. I knew what you were talking about, just in case, because we took Vince and one of the red dress to Nashville, Tennessee in December for Women in Film and Television there, and we sold it. One of my friends, Jenny Jackson, who was there from partnership that we have with Carlock Motors in Franklin, Tennessee, she auctioned that dress off for $10,000. So they got that, and they got a ride to Hollywood and
Wow.
Bentley. That's what came with that package with the $10,000 to matching.
Wow.
So I was
Wow.
very, very happy, and Vince was very happy about that. He had
And it
books
was, of
on
course,
it.
the launch of Lorna and
Want to
Liza's
know
perfume for their mom, Judy,
exactly, which
and
I have
Joey.
in the other
Let's say
room.
Joey.
I take it.
They're
I take it
brothers.
cross country with me, no matter where I'm going. I love that.
Well, it's a beautiful, beautiful packaging, and it was a wonderful night. So congratulations on that. And I want to also say that it was a beautifully curated kind of museum, kind of in when you walked in, of all of her stuff. There was a gentleman that did it, and he did a great job.
Oh, absolutely. It was beautiful. It's a wonderful night. So now June 10th is we celebrate in West Hollywood and are actually around the world Judy's 101 birthday, which will be great.
Wow.
So, Kevin, talk about this. You've been very busy. You haven't stopped. When I last talked to you, your book was about ready to come out. Talk about what that book is, because now you're writing another one, and then you started your podcast. Talk about your podcast, and
Oh,
congratulations and
okay.
welcome to our
Thank
world.
you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, it's been a pleasure. So yeah, the book, from Simon and Schuster, called Audienceology, turned out to be better than I had hoped. It is a bestseller in its category. And I have to say that the response it's just been beautiful, because people find different things about the book that stayed with them or touched them. And it's not just like young filmmakers. Like I do this area where I talk about finding your A-N-D, in the book. And because for me, I was always a hyphenate until I wasn't, meaning I was always an actor and a producer, or an actor and a focus group moderator, or a producer and a market researcher. And so it's always had an and to it. And I didn't embrace that until later, where I saw it rather than an impediment, because it does help to be centrally focused and singularly focused often. But at some point, to bring in all your other skill sets is what I learned to be a superpower. And in fact, that's what I did. I started to access those parts of my life that got me to where I am today, because none of us are here because you might have set out on one path and then you've ventured into something else. So it's a very relatable concept of finding that and embracing it and loving that and bringing that into making you the person that you are. And so when I discovered that and embraced that, a whole nother level opened up for me as a professional and as a man.
I've always wondered this. The only and you don't have and I'm surprised you don't have it, but I understand why you might not have, would be and director. Because kind of you really are directing in a way, but you don't necessarily have to do that.
Well, I've directed and choreographed because I was a dancer in my first half of my life. I am a pretty good one, I have to say. It's just not a passion necessarily of mine. But of course, again, I've accessed that part of myself. And I am a director every day as a CEO of 300 folks. You are, in many ways, a director, putting all those pieces together, certainly like a conductor, if you will, of an orchestra. And you have your first chair, which is kind of my C-suite folks, meaning my CEO, I'm the CEO, but the CFO and those people, and the COO and those people, and the chief client engagement officer and her folks, and the chief technology officer and his folks, all down the line. And so they're like the first chairs of the string section, of the, of the brass, of the woodwind, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, it is very much part of my DNA, but just not as strong as, say, the performance artist in me, who I've really had to bring back and access, because when you're moderating a focus group, when you are engaging customers and consumers in a dialogue, you're really performing in front of people. And in the beginning, when I really didn't have the skill and the art down of the moderator, I'd actually play the part almost of a moderator, and took that as a role until I felt comfortable enough to really be in that space as a bona fide qualitative research expert. And so I again used my and to get to the next place of my sort of evolution, but what I'm trying to say about the book, bringing it back to the book, is that there's things that I talk about in the book that are not movie related. And I'll get phone calls and emails and commentary of like, you really affected me in a very deep way with that story about your and, or that story about this or that. And I find that very moving. That's been probably the most surprising thing about the book. My second book is called How to Score in Hollywood. That's the current title. And, it's a long journey. It took me almost 12 years to write the first one with my co-writer, Darlene Heyman. This book is being co-written by my colleague and COO, Bob Levin, former head of marketing at 3 major studios. And it's a tough nut because there's so much I want to say. And there's that old adage, if I had more time, I'd have written you a shorter letter. And that feels very sort of very much on point with writing this book, because it's getting all of the stuff out and then really honing it in and reining it in and trying to cultivate it and kind of shape it into the book that I want it to be. That's the hardest part.
That makes sense. I totally agree with you on you are directing, because I feel that way when I'm putting all the girls together. My 12 co-hosts, they're spread across country and 2 are outside the US. So you are playing that orchestra, and I can totally relate to that, because as that percussionist, it's about that beat. If you don't have that, as they would say, the movie, that backbeat, that's where everything kicks off. So you are that general, you are that CEO, you are that director when it comes to that. And when it comes to this now, I've been looking and going cross country and watching films in different states and different towns. And I've been finding it very interesting. And I've been saying this since I was helping run the Hollywood Film Festival back in 2014 through 16. And it was one of those things is I don't see people going back to the theaters. I'm bummed by that. So my job is to help those independent filmmakers get out there, to convince that audience, if you're not going to see it at home, please go out there to support the arts, because it is about supporting the arts still. So when you're doing your stuff like this, it's about engaging that audience to making them kind of go out in a different way too. Wouldn't that be correct?
Well, not really anymore, because I actually take a different approach. I don't, I definitely see it as an art form, of course, but I don't, it's not dying to me. It's just changing. So unlike say, the opera or ballet or even live theater, which do need support and art patrons to keep those art forms alive. The film industry and the art of movie making is alive and well. It's really more about how customers and consumers and people out there want to see the movies. So actually, I predict more people going to see movies in a theater. However, they're going to see let me add another one, far fewer films. So you see huge openings like Super Mario Brothers. You see huge movies like Avatar, and huge movies like Maverick, and huge movies like Black Panther, and huge movies like name another Marvel blockbuster. And you say to yourself,
Sure.
what isn't working?
Yeah.
And the answer is almost everything else. And that is in the theater, I mean. And that is the reality of what has changed. You used to have a selection and choice, right? That you could pick and see on a weekend. It could be a good date night. It could be, and with the emerging streamers, what happened was the selection, the choice became so great in your home, and the convenience became so great. And of course, the price point became so affordable to have all of these options, price, convenience, and choice converging together for the first time in a way that we had never seen before, to say, ooh, I really am changing the way I'm going to think about leaving my home to see a movie. And so that's why you're seeing things that have an elevated sense of fun, an elevated sense of horror, an elevated comedic and action sense. All of those things, and the key word being elevated, almost like an adrenaline rush, almost like a carnival ride. Those things have a reason to exist as an experience. The question is, does a movie that doesn't have that warrant being in a movie theater? And the answer is maybe, but probably not as much as it did, say, 5 years ago, or certainly 10 years ago. And will it 5 years from now or 10 years from now? Even less than it is today, is my theory. But, capital B in but, it's important to know that there's still going to be studios producing adrenaline-filled movies that will warrant people leaving their homes and having a great time.
Absolutely. That's very, very true. Talk about, say, 5, 10 films the last 2 years that you worked on where the endings may have been changed or things in the middle didn't fit. What do you see in the audience to have been doing during lockdown compared to when, say, now, when people started to go back out in the way? What were the differences that you know?
Well, one of the things that I can't talk specifically about movies that don't have some time between them, because then I get permission to talk about them, and I want to honor the confidentiality that I'm bound to. But I will say to you, Brian, that the length of movies during the lockdown seemed to be longer than I'd ever seen before. And a lot of that was because there was less testing with consumers, with customers who weren't giving their feedback as much because we couldn't get into theaters to test until we sort of invented this new online modality called VirtuWorks, where we did online screenings. But in that break, there were many months where movies just didn't test, and I would then see them released 6 months later, 8 months later, and I would say, oh my gosh, how could this have gone out with, it's 20 minutes too long, or it's got an ending that's just not satisfying, or how could someone not have picked up on this? And my radar was going berserk because I recognized that there were just so many things that could have been changed that would have made it a better experience. Of course, I don't have the numbers to prove it, but if you can trust that I've worked on over 5,000 films in my career and I have a pretty good barometer, I believe that to really be true. And so I think what happened was a lot of these movies were released by streamers, and they were giving a lot of leeway to their filmmakers. And so they didn't or weren't hyper vigilant and didn't have the audience to weigh in. And I think that's why the audience, in my opinion, have made and make for better, more satisfying films. The audience feedback. I consider myself, Brian, to be the advocate for the audience. So, like your voice, which is certainly singularly or as a one person, is not going to be heard, but a group of you who agree on a thing, on an issue, on a challenge within a movie. My job is to recognize that and then bring that to the attention of the powers that be. And I try to do that with as much integrity and as much candor as I can to represent you and your voices. Again, not the rogue person who said everyone has an opinion, but what we're looking at is commonalities. If, you're doing a screening with 500 people and half of them are telling you that your movie is way too long, shame on you for not listening to that. You have every right to say, forget it, screw it, I'm not going to listen. But why would you do that? Like, that doesn't make sense. At least try it and see if you lessen that number to only 10% of people who are saying it's too long by testing the movie. And of course, during that period in COVID with the lockdown, we didn't really have that opportunity. And that was my biggest observation, which was very affirming as well, because I was like, well, what we do really matters. What we do really counts.
What you do absolutely matters. And I tell people about you all the time. And then I make them go look to see who you are. And they go, oh, I've never heard of this guy. I'm like, well, you need to know everything about this guy because of the things that he does.
Okay, you're going to make me have a bromance right now.
You're allowed to do that. Think about this. I'm loving everything that Taylor Sheridan does. And I remember him going back to the day, when I went to interview him and people weren't paying attention to him. I always want to help those people that you just don't know.
That's right.
That's where they may be. And I said, you better be nice to everybody because you just don't know what will happen.
Oh,
it's a perfect example.
Been my philosophy. And since I've been in this business now for 36 years, actually, I have people come up to me and say, you taught me at USC Film School or UCLA or NYU or North Carolina School of the Arts or Chapman, and you were so influential on this you said or that you said. Or they'll say, I was so-and-so head of studios assistant, and you were so nice to me when you called, and I remember that. You treated me so nicely. I have heard horror stories of people saying that was a real a-hole, that person was, and I will never be nice to them, later on. And so thank God I agree with you completely that I was that guy who really did treat everyone as I wanted to be treated.
Well, I was always that outsider. I remember I say during our Junkin days, during the heydays when there was a Miramax and a Screen Gems and Orion Pictures and TriStar, and I was in home video, and I still bring that home video mentality, just like Reed Hastings with Netflix. We were doing the same things. I still do movie reviews and more from the home video point of things. It didn't go out of style. It still works till this day. You just don't have VHS to beta. But that audience is still there. When instead
and by the way, all of those companies that you mentioned still exist. Every one of them. Miramax, TriStar, Screen Gems, and Orion all have now been have evolved to another evolution in their lives. But Screen Gems alive and well at Sony, same as TriStar, alive and well at Sony. And Miramax, Bill Block runs that, and he's doing a beautiful job. They did, Halloween and many other films, and from their library. And of course, Orion has become more of a kind of diversity and inclusion label that is trying to reach people of color and of other groups of people that don't necessarily have that voice represented in studios, and they've done a great job doing that, and love the work that comes out of them, of their label. So I'm interested to hear that you embraced those early on, and also to see that those companies still are alive and well.
Well, I always say this: if you don't adapt and adjust to the new change of things, which I saw coming in right about 2018 when we took things out of Los Angeles and we went to Tennessee to test it, and then we bring it back. It's about testing the audience. That's exactly what we did. And if it could work in Franklin, Tennessee, and Brentwood, Tennessee, which I had no idea we were going to get millions of views, I didn't. I had no idea. I still see it that way. And now that I'm winding down a lot of my travels and we'll end up in Northern Carolina, Northern California, near Skywalker Ranch, it's one of those things where I've got enough information and I've spoken to enough of people that I can speak for their voice and say, people want to see more of this, or this is what they want in the theaters. And I'm telling these people, I may be the bad guy, but I'm telling them what they need to hear, because I guarantee you, they're not going where I've been going, because I've been talking to the theater owners, that I've been talking to those people, and I've been watching them. And it bothers me, Kevin, when I see an empty theater. No matter if I'm in Vegas, if I'm in Tennessee, if I'm in Texas, I'm going to the theaters because I still support the arts. I still love going to the movies and having my popcorn. But it bothers me when there's nobody there, or I see 4 people there.
Well, as I said, go to the movies that people want to see in the theater, and you'll see crowded houses. I mean, you're not going to see people that are going, you are a very sophisticated person who likes to see a variety of films, and you happen to love to see them on the big screen, as I do. But we are of a certain age. And the truth of the matter is that particularly young people just want to see those elevated movies. So I am very encouraged when I go to a movie theater. If you go into, let's say it's a 20-plex, 24-plex, and 16 of those theaters that have the big movies are packed, and 8 of them that have the smaller ones don't. And that tells you kind of everything and validates kind of what I'm saying about people's choices today. So let's be happy that we still have people that want to go to the theater, but they just want big experiences. We're not going to, I think, through advertising or some campaign say, remember, moviegoing is an art form it's still alive and well. I think better than that would be to say, just see movies, because movies are part of our culture. In fact, so much so that it's probably the single most important American export and influence around the world of the last century, and maybe even this century. I guess maybe it might be moving into sort of the tech and mobile space, but certainly for the 20th century, Hollywood and the American culture that was brought forth around the world through movies was our most influential export.
What is it like when you have, say it's a Quentin Tarantino from back in the day, say, thank you for screen testing, whether it was Reservoir Dogs or Pulp Fiction back in the day, and you were right back then. I can see it later when people come up and tell me that. And what is your view on, I don't know if you've seen these 3 movies that I really love. One is a documentary on a Little Richard that a lady named Lisa Cortez directed. I saw it at the Pan-African Film Festival. I loved it. Told me new things about Little Richard, where I'm going back and listening to Long Tall Sally and things like that. And if you haven't seen that, have you seen King of Kings? That's produced by Debbie Allen and Quincy Jones.
Not the first one, though. Not the first one.
Okay.
But there's so many. I love this one. I'm dying to see this one on Little Richard, because
it's excellent.
You think you know enough about a certain personality, and then you discover there's a whole nother side. And by the way, documentaries are on fire. People love them and are loving them even more today, but they don't necessarily have to go to a theater to see them. But man, are they worthy. I heard there's a great one on Richard Zanuck. you know, the old
Oh yeah.
head of, well, he was like the I believe the youngest son of Daryl Zanuck. Dick Zanuck was the head of Fox, 20th Century Fox, and a producer, and won an Oscar for Driving Miss Daisy. He also produced Jaws and so many other movies. And there's a great documentary now on him. There's so many things. I
And
mean,
those are the things that people
that I
need to
just
see. I love the one on Alan Ladd Jr.,
is there
giving
one on Laddie yet?
yeah, giving the green light for Star Wars and him
Oh,
seeing what everybody, what the suits did not see. So these are what I'm telling people that they need to
he's in
see.
my book, Brian, by the way. Laddie is, and so is Dick Zanuck. I interviewed them both.
I love both of
I
those.
interviewed them
To
both.
me, if I had idols, I would say they're my idols because of what they could see that other people couldn't see.
I look, but the truth is, I got them right before they passed away. So fortunate. Sam Goldwyn too. I got him before he passed away. So I heard it. I heard those stories from those old stories of screening the movies of their fathers, of themselves, and you suddenly realize you're getting a history class in American cinema of the 20th century. And it's fascinating, just fascinating.
Talk about this when you have people come up and say, "Thank you for helping my film be better by sending it to you and the audience taking a look at it." What does that feel like?
Oh, well, it feels great, but I will tell you some very funny stories. I've had one comes to mind where a director, one of the nicest directors out there. I remember him being so angry at me for being the messenger. By the way, my podcast, for those of you who want to listen to it, is called Don't Kill the Messenger. And it's Don't Kill the Messenger refers to, hey, I'm representing the audience. I'm just giving you the information. I'm just the guy giving it to you. Don't kill me. Don't shoot me. You know, and so Don't Kill the Messenger it's available out there wherever you sort of put my name in, I guess, and the name, it'll come up. But Don't Kill the Messenger is a way for me to acknowledge that you know, I'm just given the information. So this director comes up to me and he says, well, I really hated what you said. And I said, well, I'm really, really sorry about that. And this was during the screening process. Cut to him changing the movie, testing it again, it got better. Testing it again, it got better. Testing it again, it got really good. Cut to the movie opening, and it's a hit. And he called me up and he said, I was so angry at you and I was so misplaced in my anger, and I'm so sorry if I took it out on you. It was a painful process, but a great one. And I couldn't have done it if we hadn't heard the truth. That is not an uncommon story that I've heard. So it's more in that vein that they had to go through the hard work to get there, you know, which is really acknowledging and just enormously satisfying. To answer your question, is how it feels. Just enormously gratifying to know that I had even a little bit of influence, a little bit of the privilege, I guess, to work on their movies, and I do view it as a privilege. You know, I get to have a forum, and the reason I have a forum is because I have data, and I have data because of people like you, but people who are listening, and a vast and really honest and large respect for the audience.
Last two questions for you. What would you say to get the audience to come out to support any of the arts? Doesn't matter if it's theater or going to a show or going to a movies, and name it just 5 films off the top of your head without thinking about it that left an impact to you, that what you're doing, why you're doing things today.
Well, two very different questions, but the first question, to answer your first question, is because the arts fuel our society and create a balance to the polarization, to the vast amount of negativity, to the rigidity of one's thinking and feeling and taking positions. The arts allow you to experience and uncover the humanity within us that will soften those conversations and soften that thinking. And you have to have them. When I hear the arts were killed in schools, the arts programs, I go ballistic. I can't stand it.
You and me both.
It was the music and the fine arts, and I was never very good at fine arts, but I saw the value in it, and it's every much as valuable as math and science, you know, the STEM stuff, and it's really important. They're all important, but let's not think that the arts is less important. In some ways, and if you go back to the Greeks and so forth, you'll discover it's certainly as if not more important than some of the more traditional kind of courses. And it opens us up, man. It just opens us up to beauty, to thinking that maybe we wouldn't have thought had we not experienced this piece of art. And it creates commonality, because human emotions and human kind of interconnections are all related. Like, we all feel very similarly about a lot of stuff. It's in our DNA as human beings. It brings us together as people and doesn't divide us. That's what the arts does, and that's why you should support them. Your other question, thank you. Your other question about the five, I guess, movies that left an impression, are movies really that have to do with being in an audience with them for the first time and experiencing them. And I can say that, you know, Independence Day was one. Seeing that White House blowing up. I mean, before it was in the Super Bowl ad, you know, Titanic, seeing how that played out was unbelievable to me. Borat, seeing how discovering that for the first time was insane. You know, I remember What's Love Got to Do with It, with you know, Angela Bassett, when the audience literally got up in a wave because when she left Ike, and she was standing on her own, and that was a great performance. I think of Something About Mary, being in that for the first time. No one ever knew how funny it was, and when he answers that door, you know, and you know, I don't have to tell you what happens, and he gets his you know what privates caught in his zipper. I mean, that just, people were just on the floor. When you saw 300 for the first time, and the photography and what Zack Snyder had done with the visuals was so compelling and cool. Those are the things that I really, really remember. And then, you know, movies like a lot of like Slumdog Millionaire for the first time, seeing that, like 12 Years a Slave, like really seeing that for the very first time, no reviewers, no anything, and realizing, oh, this is a work of art. Oh, this is really unbelievably special. This is LA Confidential, do you know, like one of the greatest movies. I know I'm dating myself, that what Fatal Attraction, seeing what Fatal Attraction was and then became after the new ending was put on it. These are experiences that will live with me and stay with me for my whole life. And to be in that blessed place of being in that first time, seeing these iconic films, Forrest Gump, just the greatest.
And Kevin, with that, we got to end it right there. I want to thank you for so much for coming on. And don't forget, don't kill the messenger with Kevin Gons.
Kevin Getz.
That's my mistake. I'm thinking of my other friend.
So Kevin Getz, Goetz, is my social is KevinGetz360.com. KevinGetz360.com. You can get me there or get me on Don't Kill the Messenger or my book Audienceology. Thanks so much, Brian.
Thank you so much, Kevin.